The sun spilled through the wide windows of the Maple Grove, an upscale diner in downtown Seattle, casting a warm glow over the polished wooden tables. The air buzzed with the soft clatter of silverware and the hum of morning chatter. Sarah Bennett sat at the edge of the family's usual Sunday brunch table, tucked between a clunky ice bucket and a mismatched chair that wobbled under her weight. At 24, she'd grown used to feeling like an afterthought in these gatherings. Her mother, Laura, with her perfectly manicured nails and a smile that never quite reached her eyes, was recounting a recent charity gala. Her older sister, Jessica, scrolled through her phone, oblivious to the world. Her father, Michael, ate his eggs Benedict with deliberate slowness, his gaze fixed on his plate. Only her grandfather, Henry, radiated warmth, his weathered hands cradling a mimosa as he beamed across the table. "Sarah, sweetheart, I'm so glad you're loving that apartment I got you," Henry said suddenly, his voice rich with pride as he raised his glass in a toast. The words hung in the air like a misfired arrow. The table fell silent. Sarah's fork froze mid-air, a bite of pancake dangling precariously. The orange juice in her glass seemed to burn as it slid down her throat. Every pair of eyes, Laura's sharp blue ones, Jessica's distracted glance, Michael's suddenly tense stare, locked onto her. The clink of Michael's knife hitting his plate shattered the quiet. Sarah's pulse thundered in her temples. But she steadied herself, her voice barely above a whisper. "I live in a basement, Grandpa." Henry's smile faltered, his glass lowering slowly. "What?" he asked, blinking as if he hadn't heard right. Sarah set her glass down, her hands trembling slightly as she wiped them on the napkin in her lap. She met his gaze, her voice stronger now. "I never got an apartment. I've been living in a basement for 4 years." The words landed like a grenade, and the silence that followed was suffocating. Laura's painted lips parted in confusion. Jessica's phone slipped onto the table with a soft thud. Michael coughed, reaching for his water as if choking on something invisible. Sarah's heart pounded, but she refused to break. Not here, not after years of scraping by, of being told she wasn't trying hard enough. "What are you talking about, Sarah?" Henry asked, his voice laced with disbelief. She took a deep breath, her eyes scanning the table, each face a mix of shock and discomfort. "I've been living in a windowless basement, Grandpa. The only gift I've gotten from this family in years is silence." The air grew heavy, crackling with unspoken tension. Laura's hand shook as she reached for her coffee, a single drop spilling onto the pristine tablecloth. Jessica stopped chewing her toast, her eyes wide. Michael's face drained of color, his fingers tightening around his glass. Henry leaned forward, his voice low but sharp. "Hold on. I wired $70 to your father 4 years ago for that apartment. He told me he surprised you with it after college graduation." Sarah's mouth went dry, a chill snaked up her spine. But she forced herself to breathe. She turned to Michael, whose ashen face betrayed him before he could speak. "You said you helped her find a cute place downtown," Laura whispered, her voice tight with accusation. Sarah locked eyes with her father. "Dad," she said, her tone steady but cutting. "What did you do with the money?" Michael shifted in his seat, his jaw working as if searching for words that wouldn't come. I meant to," he started. But Sarah cut him off, her voice rising. "You meant to keep it." A gasp escaped Laura's lips. Henry sat back, his knuckles white against the table's edge, looking as though he'd been punched in the gut. Sarah stood, her chair scraping against the floor. "I wasn't going to say anything today," she said, her voice sharp enough to slice through the tension. "But since we're celebrating, maybe it's time we stop pretending." She walked out, her footsteps echoing in the quiet restaurant. Behind her, chairs screeched as family members shifted uncomfortably, their murmurs trailing after her. The rage boiling inside her was a living thing. But she didn't cry, not this time. She reached the parking lot, the cool Seattle air hitting her face like a wake-up call. Footsteps crunched behind her, fast and uneven. "Sarah, wait," Henry called, his voice rough with emotion. She turned. Her grandfather looked older than he had 20 minutes ago, his broad shoulders sagging, his warm smile replaced by raw sorrow. You really never got the apartment? He asked, as if hoping she'd take it back. Sarah shook her head. I've been renting a basement from a chain-smoking landlady. The walls are yellow from nicotine. There's a boiler next to my bed that groans all night. I pay rent in cash because she doesn't trust banks. I've eaten dinner on the floor more times than I can count. Henry's eyes glistened. He swallowed hard. Your father told me you wanted to be independent. That you didn't need help. He said you were ungrateful. That you moved into your dream place without even thanking him. Sarah let out a bitter laugh. I didn't know there was anything to thank him for. Henry rubbed a hand over his face. His sigh heavy with regret. I trusted him. The silence stretched between them. But for once, it didn't feel oppressive. Then Henry said something that caught her off guard. I want to fix this. I want to see where you live. Sarah's head snapped up. Why? She asked, wary. Because if it's as bad as you say, and I believe you, then he stole from both of us. And I'm done letting anyone lie to me. That evening, Sarah drove Henry to her place in Capitol Hill. The city's vibrant streets gave way to a narrow alley where crumbling concrete steps led to her basement door. The single flickering bulb overhead buzzed as she unlocked the door. The familiar stench of stale cigarettes and mildew hitting them like a wave. She stepped aside. Welcome to my palace, she said, her voice laced with sarcasm. Henry stepped inside, his eyes scanning the cramped space, a sagging second-hand couch. A bookcase leaning precariously against the wall. Stained ceiling tiles. A twin bed shoved against a rusted laundry machine. He stood still for a long moment. Then sat on the edge of her bed, letting out a slow, heartbroken exhale. This is where you've been living? He asked. His voice barely audible. Sarah nodded. Since college. His eyes grew glassy. He told me he was saving the rest for your wedding. I thought it made sense at the time. Sarah's voice was flat, unflinching. There is no rest. Grandpa. That $70 vanished the second it hit his account. Henry looked at the floor. Then back at her. His jaw set. Not anymore. Tomorrow, we're going to the bank and my lawyer. And after that, your father and I are going to have a very long talk. Sarah didn't sleep much that night. The weight of the day pressed against her. But beneath it, something stirred, a spark of hope. A sense that she was finally being seen. The truth was out, and the cracks in her family's polished facade were starting to show. Tomorrow, she and Henry would begin unraveling the lies. For the first time in years, Sarah felt like she wasn't fighting alone. The Seattle skyline was cloaked in a soft morning mist as Sarah Bennett sat in the passenger seat of her grandfather Henry's old Buick. The hum of the engine a steady backdrop to the storm of emotions swirling inside her. At 24, she'd spent years clawing her way through a life that felt like it was built to break her. But now, with Henry by her side, the weight of yesterday's revelation at the family brunch felt like the first crack in a dam that had held back the truth for too long. Her father, Michael, had stolen $70 meant for her apartment, lied to the family, and left her to scrape by in a dingy basement. Today, they were going to start setting things right. Henry's jaw was set as he drove toward the downtown branch of Pacific Trust Bank. His hands gripping the wheel with a quiet fury Sarah had never seen before. We're getting answers, he said, his voice like steel. And if Michael thinks he can dodge this, he's got another thing coming. Sarah nodded, her heart pounding not with fear but with a strange, electric anticipation. For the first time, she wasn't alone in this fight. The bank's interior was all sleek marble and hushed voices. A stark contrast to the chaos of Sarah's thoughts. They were ushered into the office of Ms. Carolyn Hayes, a prim woman in her 50s with wire-rimmed glasses and a no-nonsense demeanor. She clicked through records on her computer. Her lips pursed as she traced the path of the $70 Henry had wired to Michael 4 years ago. Here it is, she said finally, turning the monitor toward them. A transfer from your account. Mr. Bennett, to Michael Bennett, marked as gift for Sarah's condo. Dated June 15, 2021. Sarah's breath caught as she stared at the screen. The numbers were real, undeniable, but Ms. Hayes clicked again. And Sarah's stomach dropped. 5 days later, the entire sum had been moved to a separate investment account under Michael's name alone. No mention of Sarah. No note. Nothing. Henry's face hardened, his eyes narrowing. Can you print all of that? He asked. His voice calm but laced with ice. Ms. Hayes nodded, stepping away to retrieve the documents. Henry turned to Sarah, his expression unreadable. He betrayed you, Sarah, and he lied to me. This isn't just family drama, it's theft. Sarah's hands curled into fists in her lap. I know, she said quietly, but I'm not letting him control my life anymore. Henry's gaze softened, a flicker of pride breaking through his anger. That's my girl. We'll handle this together. By noon, they were in the wood-paneled office of Henry's lawyer, Howard Grayson, a wiry man with a sharp mind and a reputation for getting things done. Henry had pulled strings to secure an emergency meeting, and Howard wasted no time. He spread the bank records across his desk, his pen tapping as he reviewed the evidence. This is clear misappropriation, he said, glancing at Henry. We can pursue legal action, fraud, breach of fiduciary duty. Michael could face serious consequences. Henry nodded, his voice firm. Draft a letter stating I no longer authorize Michael to act on my behalf in any financial capacity. And I want every cent traced. Sarah listened in silence, her bare feet cold against the office's polished floor. She'd spent years feeling invisible. But now, with Henry's resolve and Howard's expertise, she felt a shift, like the world was finally bending in her favor. Howard turned to her. Sarah, if you're willing, we can file a civil suit to recover the funds. It's your call. She met his gaze, her voice steady. Do it. I want what's mine. That afternoon, they drove to Michael's house in Bellevue, a sprawling suburban home Sarah hadn't visited in years. The sight of it stirred old memories, decorating cupcakes with her mother, Laura, in the sunny kitchen, learning to ride a bike with Michael in the driveway before he started ignoring her calls. Now, the house felt like a stranger's. Henry rang the doorbell, and Michael answered, his face a mix of confusion and annoyance that shifted to panic when he saw them both. We need to talk, Henry said, his tone leaving no room for argument. Michael hesitated, then stepped aside. Laura hovered in the living room, her brows furrowed, while Jessica peeked from the staircase, sensing the tension like a storm on the horizon. Henry didn't waste time. He placed a thick folder of bank records on the coffee table, the papers landing with a heavy thud. You told me Sarah was living in the apartment I bought her, he said, his voice cutting through the room. But you took the $70. You stole it, and you let her suffer in a basement while you lied to us all. Michael's face flushed, and he let out a nervous chuckle. Come on, Dad, you're blowing this out of proportion, but Sarah cut him off, her voice sharp as a blade. Don't. You told me I was lazy, entitled, that I didn't deserve help. You let me scrub floors to pay rent while you pocketed the money meant to give me a start. Laura gasped, her hand flying to her mouth. Michael, tell me this isn't true, she whispered, but Michael said nothing, his jaw clenched tight. Henry opened the folder, sliding the bank records toward Michael. I've spoken to Howard. We'll pursue legal action if we have to. But you're going to pay back every cent. And at the next brunch, you'll explain yourself to the family. No more secrets. The room was suffocating, the air thick with unspoken truths. Sarah stood, her hands still shaking but her resolve unbreakable. I'm done pretending you're a good father, she said, and walked out, Henry close behind. That night, Henry made a promise. You're moving in with me next week. Sarah, I've already called a realtor. We'll find you a proper place. Sarah looked at him, the man who'd believed in her when no one else did, and nodded. Thank you, Grandpa. For the first time in years, she felt a flicker of hope, a chance to rebuild. A week later, Sarah stood in her new apartment in Queen Anne, a bright, airy space with floor-to-ceiling windows that let the Seattle skyline spill into the room. The hardwood floors gleamed under the morning sun and the air was free of mildew and cigarette smoke. She ran her fingers along the windowsill, marveling at the quiet. No groaning pipes, no shouting landlady, just peace. She sat up to a small desk in the corner, dusted off her old laptop, and opened a folder she hadn't touched in years. Designs, sketches and layouts from her college days. Dreams she'd buried under job applications and bills. Her father's voice echoed in her mind. It's cute. But when are you going to get serious? But she pushed it aside. She was serious now. Sarah poured herself into her passion, building an online portfolio and applying to design studios across the city. She used the money Henry gave her, not the stolen $70, which was still tied up in legal proceedings, but a new fund he'd set up for her, to cover rent and invest in a proper drafting tablet. Weeks turned into months, and one rainy afternoon, her phone rang. It was a creative director from Cascade Architecture, a local firm launching a community housing project. We saw your portfolio, the woman said. Your work with small spaces is exactly what we need. Can you come in tomorrow? Sarah walked into their downtown office the next day, wearing the same beige coat her mother once called cheap and childish. The receptionist offered her water. The creative director offered her a seat. And by the end of the meeting, Sarah had a contract in hand. It wasn't just a job, it was proof that she was never the failure her father had painted her to be. Her designs, born from years of making do in a cramped basement, were now valued by people who saw her potential. Months later, Sarah hosted her first brunch in her new apartment. The table was set with real plates, not paper ones, and the room was filled with laughter and the scent of fresh scones she'd baked herself. Henry brought a bouquet of lilies, placing them in a vase Sarah had bought with her first paycheck. Her cousin, Rachel, who once scoffed at her art, leaned in, asking about color palettes and mood boards with genuine interest. Laura attended, quieter than usual, her eyes carrying the weight of the family's fractured trust. Jessica showed up, sunglasses off for once, actually listening. Michael was absent. He'd repaid the $70 on time, as ordered by the court. But his apologies remained on paper, never spoken aloud. Sarah didn't mind. His absence was a gift in itself. As the brunch wound down, Henry caught Sarah's eye, a soft smile playing on his lips. This, he said, his hand resting lightly on hers. This is what I imagined for you. Sarah squeezed his hand, her heart full. Me too, Grandpa. Outside, the Seattle rain had stopped, and sunlight broke through the clouds, streaming through her windows like a promise kept. Sarah wasn't just surviving anymore, she was thriving. Her dreams no longer confined to a basement but soaring as high as the city skyline.